There's no doubt that retail, along with many other industries, has been really hit hard this year. The abrupt nature of the closures, the change that brought, and the demands that it put on organisations have sadly outstripped many. But for others, there has actually been an opportunity in this madness, an opportunity to maybe expedite business change that might never have happened if those forces hadn't been there. And so, well, you know, it gives that opportunity for brands to, well, make the most of it. As a retail loyalty specialist, I have been particularly intrigued this year by the changes that brands have made to quickly establish themselves as the brands that matter in a crisis. Those companies who can best demonstrate the part they play in customers' lives have really seen some positive growth and will have allowed them to now start to think about loyalty strategy in the longer term. Despite that tumultuous year, there are opportunities to develop a loyalty strategy that suits the needs of your business and your customers. And I'm delighted to be here today to share with you what I think is needed to do that, and actually what I don't think is needed. Loyalty in 2021, and indeed in a post-lockdown world, is about far more than a plastic card, some points, and an improved retention rate. Don't get me wrong, retention rate is a good measure, but it is limited to whether your customers are shopping with you and continue to do so over time. So in some ways, it can be bought with offers and incentives and gimmicks. Loyalty, however, is about so much more. In a nutshell, I describe it as whether a person has a higher consideration of you as a brand and are choosing you as a brand because of the experience they have with you. By nature, I'm an action taker. So when I first started working in loyalty, I believed that it had to be built. We had to put incentives in place to drive customers towards the behaviour we wanted. And it was all very forceful and one-dimensional. My brand will reward you with this if you do that in return. And I was eager to please accountants by providing a single metric of success and calculating the benefit from that. I wanted to show that linear progress through those stages of increased spend and frequency, and use that as a measure of whether people were loyal or not. What I now realise is that it's actually more about ensuring that our organisations get really specific about what loyalty looks like for them and what contributes to that. Maybe that's operational or marketing. It might be about rewards, service, or even product, but it's really worth spending the time understanding what it is that makes you special to your customers so that that becomes your primary focus. But recognise straight away that it is multifaceted. You will need a variety of different measures to take a read on the degree of loyalty. I now see that loyalty to a brand is not just about spend, but about regularity, breadth, profitability, and advocacy. Loyalty isn't an isolated thing. You can't make it happen simply by doing something better or with greater speed, the right data, or having the leading technology in place. It's about people. It's about your customers. It's about approach. And moreover, it's about your culture. It's not a science or an art. Loyalty is a mindset. And consequently, it must be grown, developed over time, expanded and nurtured within your business. So, of course, we all know what has happened over the last 12 months, and overnight, the needs of so many consumers changed. People were really looking to brands to fulfill a very different role in their life and potentially considering brands that they'd never considered before. So, of course, there was this big opportunity for retail and for other brands. There was that opportunity for them to make their communication really clear about who they were, what they did, why they were relevant at that time, and to demonstrate empathy. They needed to say, I've got you, I understand you, and I'm here. But of course, not many brands started last year with no existing base. So they still needed to find a way of communicating to their existing customers that they were still the brand that they loved and they trusted. They hadn't changed just because they were doing things differently. They were still that brand that they trusted. But at the same time, they needed to make sure that they were in the right place with the right message for those prospective customers to tell them why they were relevant to them now. Once they've been successful in acquiring those customers, they have now had to turn their attention to how to keep them and how to retain them. These customers may not have any similarities to the current customer profile. And so it was really important that they started to understand those new customers better and start getting it right for them as well. And of course, the circumstances gave huge opportunities for brands to show that empathy in action. And that might have been around service level. It might have been around delivery and availability. It might have been simply by showing up and demonstrating that we're all in this together with ideas for homeschooling, working from home, taking up new hobbies and skills, or even just helping someone who hasn't placed an online supermarket shop before place it for the first time. So you might ask, why does this even have anything to do with loyalty? And why does it provide an opportunity in loyalty? Well, in all of that, brands needed to get really familiar really quickly with their customers. There was an absolute need to understand the reasons that people were being driven to their brands and respond appropriately. Remember what I said about loyalty being about the degree to which customers give you a higher level of consideration based on the experience you have. And there was absolutely opportunity last year to demonstrate to people that you got them, you understood them, and you were there. The attraction of new customers to their brand was circumstantial. Nobody really could have predicted that. But it meant that if they focused in on that experience that they were giving, there was a better than ever chance that they would succeed in retaining them and starting that nurturing process. What's more, they had potentially attracted people who wouldn't have considered them, delivering incrementality. There was growth in categories that were unexpected, driving breadth and profit. There were opportunities to make changes to how they operated, particularly around service and delivery and returns, that show empathy, driving advocacy. And there was that opportunity to carve out a new role for their brand in customers' lives at a time when people needed brands to step up, improving regularity. What do you need to nurture loyalty? You need that special place in your customers' hearts and minds. And the last 12 months has demonstrated that more than ever. So I mentioned I'm task-oriented. So I always kind of feel like it's all well and good having this kind of super statement about what loyalty is and how you're going to identify it. But what do you actually need to have in place, and what needs to happen in order to make this come alive? Well, the bad news is there is no blueprint. It's a very specific set of requirements to your business, your industry, and your customers. But if you are prepared to get up close and personal with those customers through the interactions they have with your brand, then it becomes a lot clearer. Here I'm talking about tiny little indications in your data, micro conversions, the things that customers do along the way that give you an idea of what they like, what they don't like, what they think you do well, what they think you don't do well, and what they would like more of. And the great news is that once you adopt that loyalty mindset and you start to look at your data in that way, you can really start to engage the mindsets of the whole business. You can illustrate for them, you can show them, you can talk to them in language about your customer. And what that does is it makes sure that they really understand it, they can imagine that customer, and they can eventually solve for that customer. Now, I always try to kind of give this some structure because I think very often when looking at what you need for loyalty, you want to be able to go through a set of requirements and check that you've got everything in place. And I categorize those requirements into 4 key areas. The first one, as I've just mentioned, is solving for your customer. This is all about making sure that everybody around the business is focused on customer. It's not just simply about saying that you're customer centric, but it's about living that customer centricity. If you can make it really clear for people what your customer looks like, then you can cast that vision and then allow those teams to go away and work down into the detail as specialists in that area to create initiatives that solve for that customer. It might mean structure change, it might mean process change, it might mean new initiatives being launched. But what you will be sure about is that you are solving for your customer and delivering for them on the things that are important to them. The second one is technology, systems, and process selections. Now, it's so easy when you're looking at loyalty to think, well, I'm going to need a piece of technology to help me with this. But actually, where I would start is simply by saying, what do I want to do? What do I want to deliver? And what are my current capabilities? And then do some sort of gap analysis to say, this is where I want to get to. This is what I can do today. What do I need to help me bridge that gap? It might ultimately mean that you do need new pieces of technology, but in approaching it like this, you'll be able to identify whether it is in fact that, or whether it's a change somewhere else in the business. And when you do get around to looking at technology, it will mean that you find a solution that you need, rather than a solution that looks great and does lots of fantastic things, but actually is underutilized in your business. The third one is democratization of data. Now, let me be clear here. What I don't mean is that we create a situation where there's no responsibility or accountability around data. We absolutely need specialist, skilled people in our businesses to ensure that the security and the safety and the robustness of our data is there. But what I mean here is that we absolutely need to stop thinking about data as being the property of the business intelligence team or the finance team. We need to start getting our teams thinking about data being a resource for them to use to improve their performance. Be really clear with your teams and all of your business areas about what data is available. How do they access that? And how can they use it in their day-to-day work? And most importantly, align your teams around the use of data and the importance of consistency. Because when you use data consistency, it improves the experience for your customers. Try not to find yourself in a situation where people are defining new customers in different ways. That can cause a lot of trouble for your campaigns and really limit your performance. And the final one is measurement. I've mentioned metrics before, and within loyalty, I think there are many, many metrics that you will use to measure it. But what you need to make sure as a group of people is that you are aligned on what metrics indicate loyalty in your business. Are you clear on what and where and how you will find those metrics in your data? And try and move past the idea that retention and spend are the only indicators of loyalty. In some industries I've worked, even our most regular high value spending shoppers were actually shopping at all of our competitors. So high spend with us actually meant just high spend in the market rather than a distinct loyalty to our brand. So you need to use an element of caution when using those metrics in isolation. And so once those 4 pillars are in place and you're happy that they fit with your business, what you absolutely need to then start doing is layering in your brand and your culture. You need to ensure that, because none of this happens without people, you need to make sure that the strategy, along with the decisions that you're making around technology, data, and reporting, are things that will work within your business. Is it the type of approach that will help teams, facilitate teams to put customer data at the centre of their planning and decision making? Can it provide customer data for their real-time decision making? And more than anything, the adoption of the approach, the buy-in from everybody around the business to what loyalty means and how you will achieve it will determine the success or otherwise of the strategy. is if everyone is in a loyalty mindset, the experiences you give to customers will improve, and so positively affects the degree to which your customers choose you.